I gave my blanket to a stranger. Then the alien queen declared me her mate. So frost and fortune. The winds of Kyria howled like vengeful spirits, driving needles of ice against the reinforced dome of Research Station Meridian. Inside, Dr. Elias Voss rubbed his tired eyes as he studied tissue samples under a microscope, the blue glow casting shadows across his weathered face. 6 months stationed on this frozen wasteland had taught him to appreciate the simple luxury of warmth. Anything interesting in those cells, Doc? Commander Reeves leaned against the doorframe, her breath visible in the perpetually cold laboratory. Nothing we haven't seen before, Elias sighed, pushing back from his workstation. The Lumidians may look somewhat like us, but their cellular structure is remarkably adaptive to extreme temperatures. That's why they thrive here while we huddle in these heated bubbles, Reeves said with a smirk. The diplomatic team thinks we're close to establishing regular communication channels. The Lumidians have finally agreed to send representatives tomorrow. Elias nodded absently. As the station's chief medical officer, he'd been tasked with understanding Lumidian biology in case of cross-species medical emergencies. So far, his knowledge remained entirely theoretical. The purple-skinned beings kept to themselves in their crystalline cities beyond the mountains. The station alarm suddenly blared to life, its urgent wail cutting through their conversation. "Perimeter breach, Sector 7, announced the automated system. "Unknown biosignature detected." In this storm? Reeves was already moving, Elias close behind her. They rushed to the monitoring station where Officer Chen pointed to a thermal reading on the screen. Something collapsed just outside the east airlock. "Signature is faint but present." "Lumidian?" Elias asked, heart racing. "Can't confirm. The storm's interfering with the sensors." Elias was already pulling on his thermal suit. "I'm going out there." "Protocol says," Reeves began, "if it's one of them and they die on our doorstep, we can forget about diplomatic relations," Elias interrupted. "I'm the medical officer. This is my call." Minutes later, Elias pushed through the outer airlock into the raging blizzard. Visibility was near zero, the powerful floodlights barely penetrating the swirling white. He followed the tracker on his wrist display, each step a battle against the howling wind. Then he saw it, a dark shape half buried in the snow. Moving closer, he gasped. A Lumidian lay unconscious, their purple skin almost blue with cold. The elegant robes they wore were woefully inadequate for the storm's ferocity. Without hesitation, Elias knelt beside the fallen figure. It was a female, her delicate features framed by silver-white hair that whipped wildly in the wind. She wasn't breathing well. Even Lumidians had limits to their cold tolerance. Elias activated his emergency transponder and then, in a decision that would change everything, removed his thermal blanket. The specialized material was the only thing keeping the bitter cold from penetrating his suit, but the Lumidian needed it more. He wrapped it carefully around her still form, the blanket automatically adjusting to provide maximum warmth. "Hang on," he whispered, though she couldn't hear him. "Help is coming." As he cradled the Lumidian's head, her eyes fluttered open momentarily, brilliant violet irises fixing on him with startling clarity before closing again. Something passed between them in that brief connection, something Elias couldn't name but felt deep in his chest. The rescue team arrived minutes later, rushing both Elias and the mysterious Lumidian back to the station. While the medical team worked to stabilize their unexpected visitor, Elias himself was treated for early-stage hypothermia. That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, Dr. Lena Kor scolded as she wrapped thermal bandages around his frost-bitten hands. "Maybe both," Elias admitted, his thoughts still with the Lumidian woman. "How is she?" "Stable. Their physiology is remarkable. She's recovering faster than any human would." "But Elias," Lena lowered her voice, "the markings on her clothing, according to our cultural briefings, they indicate royalty." Elias felt his stomach drop. "Royalty here? In a storm?" "The diplomatic team is in chaos. They've contacted the Lumidian city. Apparently, someone very important went missing during a spiritual journey." By morning, Elias had recovered enough to check on his patient, only to find her room empty. The Lumidian had vanished sometime in the night, taking his thermal blanket with her. "She left this." Commander Reeves handed him a small crystal that pulsed with soft purple light. "They say it's a royal token." "Congratulations, Doc. You've been summoned to the Crystal Palace." Elias stared at the glowing crystal, unaware that his simple act of kindness had set in motion events that would reshape two worlds and his heart forever.
Boo.
Purple Proclamation. The Crystal Palace lived up to its name, rising from the frozen landscape like a fragment of amethyst caught in perpetual sunlight. Elias stood with Commander Reeves and the human diplomatic team, trying not to gape at the soaring spires that seemed to defy gravity. "Remember," Ambassador Lin whispered, "no direct eye contact with the royal family unless invited. Bow from the waist, palms open to show you carry no weapons." Elias nodded numbly. 3 days had passed since his encounter in the blizzard, and the invitation to the Lumidian royal court had thrown the entire research station into a frenzy of diplomatic preparations. A delegation of tall, purple-skinned Lumidians approached, their movements graceful despite the intimidating ceremonial armor they wore. The lead guard, his crest more elaborate than the others, addressed them in perfect if somewhat formal English. "The court of her radiance awaits. Follow the path of light and stray not." The great crystal doors parted, revealing a throne room that took Elias's breath away. Light refracted through the transparent walls, casting rainbow patterns across the gathered Lumidian nobility. They stood in perfect formation, their silver-white hair and purple skin adorned with bioluminescent markings that pulsed in what seemed to be synchronization. At the center, upon a dais of what appeared to be living crystal, sat an ornate throne, and upon it, "That's her," Elias whispered, recognizing the Lumidian woman he had rescued. Now, however, she was transformed. Gone was the vulnerability he had witnessed in the storm. Princess Nyla Shirani of the Lumidian royal house sat with regal composure, her violet eyes surveying the human delegation with cool assessment. A crown of crystalline flowers adorned her head, and her robes shimmered with embedded lights that seemed to dance with her every subtle movement. "Approach, humans of Earth," called out an elderly Lumidian who stood beside the throne. "You stand before her radiance, Princess Nyla Shirani, heir to the crystal throne and voice of the ancestors." The delegation bowed as instructed. Elias followed suit, though he couldn't take his eyes completely off the princess. Had he imagined the connection between them during the rescue? She showed no sign of recognition now. "Which among you is the healer called Elias Voss?" the elderly Lumidian asked. Ambassador Lin nudged Elias forward. "He is here, Your Excellence." Elias stepped forward, heart hammering in his chest. "I am Elias Voss." For the first time, Princess Nyla's composed expression shifted. Her eyes locked with his, and the bioluminescent patterns on her skin brightened noticeably. "You are the one who surrendered warmth to preserve life," she said, her voice melodic and carrying throughout the chamber. "You wrapped me in your thermal shield without thought to your own safety." Elias swallowed hard. "I'm a doctor. It's what anyone would have done." A murmur rippled through the gathered Lumidians, and the princess actually smiled. "Not anyone," she corrected. "Few would risk the eternal cold for a stranger. Fewer still for one not of their kind." She rose from her throne in a fluid motion, descending the steps until she stood directly before him. Up close, Elias could see the faint patterns beneath her purple skin, like constellations mapped across her face. "You are unaware of our ways," Princess Nyla continued. "The gift of life warmth is sacred among our people. To share one's warmth during the great storms is the most intimate offering one can make." The elderly advisor cleared his throat. "Your radiance, perhaps this matter should be discussed in private council." "No, Elder Vox," Princess Nyla interrupted, her voice firm. "The stars have spoken. Tradition must be honored." She turned back to Elias, who stood frozen in confusion. With deliberate movements, she withdrew his thermal blanket, now adorned with intricate Lumidian symbols, and held it between them. "By the ancient laws of Kyria, by the will of the ancestors, and by my own heart's choice," Princess Nyla announced, her voice ringing through the chamber, "I accept this human's offering and declare him my chosen mate." The throne room erupted in chaos. The Lumidian nobles broke formation, their synchronized lights now flashing in discordant patterns. The human delegation stood in stunned silence, Ambassador Lin's mouth literally hanging open. Elias felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath him. "You're what?" Princess Nyla seemed untroubled by the commotion. Her violet eyes held his with surprising warmth. "My mate," she repeated softly for his ears alone. "The one who shall stand beside me as I lead our people into a new age." "There must be some misunderstanding," Elias stammered. "I was just providing medical assistance." "There is no misunderstanding," she replied. "You gave without expectation of return. That is the essence of the bond gift. She tilted her head, studying his expression. Are humans not permitted to form unions with those of royal blood? Before Elias could formulate a response, Commander Reeves stepped forward. Your Radiance, Dr. Voss, was unaware of your customs. In human culture, his actions were simply those of a healer doing his duty. Princess Nyla's expression hardened. Are you suggesting he would reject this honor? Ambassador Lin quickly intervened. Not at all, Your Radiance. We're merely suggesting that our peoples need time to adjust to this unexpected development. Perhaps a period of cultural exchange would be beneficial. Elder Vox nodded vigorously. A wise suggestion. The tradition of selection allows for a season of mutual understanding before final bonding. Princess Nyla considered this, her gaze never leaving Elias. Finally, she nodded. Very well. The human healer will remain within the Crystal Palace for one full cycle of our moons. He will learn our ways and I shall learn his. At cycle's end, the bond ceremony will proceed. She turned to address the entire assembly. Let it be known that this union represents the first step toward true harmony between our worlds. The stars have chosen wisely. As the formal audience concluded, Elias found himself being led away by Lumidian attendants, his mind reeling. Through a daze, he heard Ambassador Lin assuring him that they would find a diplomatic solution. Don't worry, Doctor, she whispered. We won't actually let you marry an alien princess. But as Elias glanced back, catching Princess Nyla's intense gaze following him, he wasn't entirely sure that avoiding this honor was what he wanted after all. Stellar customs. The Lumidian day has 27 Earth hours, explained Mira, the cultural attaché assigned to Elias. You will find your quarters adjusted to approximate this rhythm. Elias nodded, still overwhelmed by the events of the past week. His rooms in the Crystal Palace were spacious and surprisingly comfortable, despite being designed for Lumidian physiology. The walls pulsed with a gentle blue light that adjusted to his moods, currently a turbulent swirl that reflected his inner confusion. When will I see the princess again? He asked, immediately regretting how eager the question sounded. Mira's purple lips curved in what might have been amusement. Her Radiance attends to state matters until the evening meal. She has requested your presence then. The attaché paused. You should know that Princess Nyla's decision has caused division among our people. Some see your union as the dawn of a new era, others view it as a threat to our genetic purity. There won't be any union, Elias said quickly, though with less conviction than before. This is just a cultural misunderstanding, is it? Mira asked, head tilted. The princess selected you before knowing of your ignorance of our customs. Perhaps the misunderstanding is merely convenient. Before Elias could probe further, Mira departed, leaving him alone with his thoughts. He spent the afternoon exploring his chambers and the adjoining garden, a remarkable indoor ecosystem where crystalline plants grew in harmonious patterns, responding to his presence with subtle movements and color changes. When evening arrived, Lumidian attendants escorted him through corridors that seemed to shift and change, finally arriving at a private dining chamber where Princess Nyla awaited. She wore simpler attire than during the formal audience, though no less elegant. Flowing robes of midnight blue that contrasted beautifully with her purple skin. Dr. Voss, she greeted him, gesturing to the cushion across from her. Please join me. Elias sat awkwardly, noting the absence of chairs. The low table between them held an array of unfamiliar foods that glowed with faint bioluminescence. I've arranged for some earth dishes as well, Nyla said, indicating several recognizable items. Though I hope you'll sample our cuisine. Thank you. Your Radiance, he replied, uncertain of the proper address. Nyla, she corrected. When we are alone, I would hear my name from your lips. The intimacy of the request made Elias's cheeks warm. Nyla, then. And I'm Elias. She smiled, and the patterns beneath her skin brightened. Elias, tell me of your world, your life before Kyria. As they ate, the Lumidian food surprisingly delicious despite its alien appearance, Elias found himself opening up. He told her about growing up in Seattle, about medical school, about joining the Interstellar Research Initiative to explore new frontiers of medicine. You are a healer of great passion, Nyla observed. Is there no mate waiting for you on Earth? Elias shook his head. My last relationship ended 2 years ago. We wanted different things. He hesitated, then ventured. What about you? Surely there must be Lumidian nobles eager to make the bond gift? Nyla's expression darkened slightly. Many have tried. None with sincerity. She studied him intently. You wonder why I have chosen you. The thought has crossed my mind a few thousand times, Elias admitted. She rose gracefully, moving to a window that overlooked the crystalline city below. I was on a vision quest when the storm caught me. Our tradition holds that during such journeys the universe reveals truths otherwise hidden. She turned back to him. When I saw you through the snow, haloed by your ship's lights, risking your life for mine without knowing who I was. I knew. Knew what? Elias asked, drawn to his feet as if by magnetic pull. That you were different. That you acted from the heart, not from calculation or ambition. She moved closer to him. Do you know how rare that is among those who approach power? Elias could feel the warmth radiating from her body. See the intricate patterns beneath her purple skin pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. I'm just a doctor, he said softly. Not a diplomat or a ruler. Perhaps that is precisely why the stars chose you. Nyla reached out, her fingers hesitantly touching his cheek. Your world values contracts and negotiations. Mine values bonds formed through actions. You acted, Elias. Your heart revealed itself in the storm. The touch of her hand sent a strange, pleasant tingling across his skin. Elias found himself leaning slightly into the contact, his reservations momentarily forgotten. There are those who oppose this union, she continued, her voice lower. My cousin, Prince Taris, believes only pure Lumidian blood should rule. The bond gift gives him reason to challenge my right to succession. Is that why you chose me? Elias asked. As a political move? Nyla withdrew her hand, her eyes flashing. I chose you because you awakened something in me. Because when our eyes met in that storm, I felt completion. She stepped back. But I see you require more time to understand our ways. The sudden distance between them felt like a physical loss. I'm trying, Elias said. This is all very sudden. We have 26 days remaining before the bond ceremony, Nyla said, composure returning. Each day I will share more of our world with you, and perhaps in time you will share more of yourself with me. As Elias returned to his quarters later that night, he found himself touched by her candor. The political implications of their potential union troubled him, but the memory of her fingers on his skin, the intensity in her violet eyes when she spoke of completion, these thoughts kept him awake long into the Lumidian night. What had begun as a medical emergency was becoming something far more complex and far more personal than he had ever anticipated. Whispers of sabotage. 18 days into his stay at the Crystal Palace, Elias found himself increasingly at home among the Lumidians. The daily rhythm of life, meditation at dawn, followed by cultural studies, shared meals, and evening walks with Nyla through the bioluminescent gardens, had become surprisingly comfortable. Today, Nyla had promised to show him something special, leading him through a section of the palace he hadn't yet explored. These caverns run beneath the entire city, she explained as they descended a spiral staircase that seemed carved from a single massive crystal. They contained the Heartwells, the source of our connection to Kyria itself. Elias followed her into a vast underground chamber where pools of glowing purple liquid pulsed with hypnotic rhythm. The air felt charged with energy, making the hair on his arms stand on end. It's beautiful, he breathed, watching as Lumidian attendants performed intricate rituals around the pools. More than beautiful, Nyla said. These wells contain essence fluid that connects all Lumidian life. Through them, we share dreams, memories, even emotions across great distances. She led him to the edge of the nearest pool. This is why my people were initially so wary of humans. We feared your presence might disrupt the harmony of the Heartwells. Elias knelt beside the pool, fascinated by the swirling patterns in the liquid. And has it? No, Nyla smiled. If anything, since you arrived, the readings have shown stronger resonance patterns. She hesitated, then added softly, some believe it's a sign that humans and Lumidians were meant to find each other. Their eyes met, and Elias felt that now familiar surge of connection between them. Over the past weeks, their conversations had grown deeper, more personal. He'd found himself charmed by her quick mind, her dry humor, her genuine curiosity about human culture. The initial awkwardness had given way to something that felt increasingly like attraction. Before he could respond, An alarm echoed through the cavern, a haunting, crystalline tone that sent the attendants rushing to various stations. "What's happening?" Elias asked, rising quickly. Nyla's face had gone pale, the patterns beneath her skin flashing rapidly. "Contamination alert. Something's been introduced to the Heartwells." She turned to the nearest attendant. "Report. Northern well shows toxic compounds, your radiance," the attendant replied. "Spreading rapidly through the network. Seal the contaminated section," Nyla ordered, her voice commanding despite the fear evident in her eyes. "Begin purification protocols immediately." Elias stepped forward. "I might be able to help. What kind of contamination are we dealing with?" An elderly Lumidian scientist approached, holding a crystal tablet displaying complex molecular structures. "Unknown compound. Appears designed to target the neural connectors in the essence fluid." Elias studied the display, his medical training kicking in. "This looks like a neurotoxin, but specifically engineered to affect Lumidian physiology." He glanced at Nyla. "This wasn't an accident. Someone with knowledge of both your biology and advanced chemistry created this." Nyla's expression hardened. "Sabotage, then?" She turned to her guards. "Double the palace security. No one enters or leaves until we identify the source." Hours later, in an improvised laboratory set up near the Heartwells, Elias worked alongside Lumidian scientists to develop a neutralizing agent. His human perspective proved valuable, approaching the problem from angles the Lumidians hadn't considered. "There," he said finally, holding up a vial of shimmering blue liquid. "This should break down the toxin without harming the essence fluid. It's basically an engineered enzyme that targets the specific molecular structure." The head scientist, Elder Kira, examined his work with amazement. "Remarkable. We would have needed days to develop something similar." Nyla, who had refused to leave despite her advisor's concerns for her safety, stepped forward. "Will it work?" "In theory," Elias said, "but we should test it on a small sample first." The test proved successful, and within hours the purification of the Heartwells was underway. As the crisis subsided, Elias noticed Nyla looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. "What?" he asked. "You've saved my people twice now," she said quietly. "First me, now our Heartwells," Elias shrugged. Just doing what needed to be done. Later that evening, as they sat in Nyla's private chambers discussing the day's events, a royal guard entered with urgent news. "We've identified the saboteur, your radiance. Security footage shows Lord Vex, cousin to Prince Terrace, accessing the northern well during the night cycle." Nyla's eyes flashed dangerously. "Bring him to me." Lord Vex, a tall Lumidian with unusually dark purple skin, stood defiantly before them, flanked by guards. "I admit nothing," he hissed. "The evidence is clear," Nyla said coldly. "You attempted to poison our Heartwells, an act of treason against all Lumidians." "Better poison than pollution by human influence," Vex spat, glaring at Elias. "Prince Terrace understands what you refuse to see. These humans will destroy everything that makes us Lumidian if allowed to integrate with our society." Elias felt a chill run through him. The contamination was meant to coincide with our union announcement, he realized aloud, to make it seem as though human presence was disrupting the Heartwells. A convenient tragedy that would turn public opinion against your bonding, Vex confirmed with a cruel smile. "Prince Terrace would have been the natural choice to assume leadership after your failure." "Take him to the detention crystals," Nyla ordered. "And bring Prince Terrace for questioning immediately." After the guards departed with Vex, Nyla turned to Elias, her composed facade crumbling slightly. "Politics has always been dangerous in the royal court, but never has anyone dared to attack the Heartwells themselves." She paced the room, the patterns on her skin shifting anxiously. "This changes everything." "How so?" Elias asked. "The bond ceremony cannot proceed as planned, not while this conspiracy unfolds." She stopped before him, taking his hands in hers. "Elias, I must ask you something, and I need complete honesty." He nodded, suddenly aware of how comfortable her touch had become. "If circumstances were different, if there were no political implications, no cultural misunderstandings, would you consider the bond between us worth pursuing?" The question caught him off guard, but as he looked into her violet eyes, Elias realized the answer had been forming for weeks. "Yes," he said simply. "I would." The patterns beneath her skin brightened with joy, but her expression remained serious. Then we must protect what we've found. Taris and his followers will not stop with this failed attempt. As if to confirm her words, an explosion shook the palace, distant but powerful enough to rattle the crystal walls of her chamber. The research station, Elias gasped, recognizing the direction. They're targeting the human settlement. Nyla's eyes widened in horror. The final phase of their plan. Eliminate the humans, blame it on an accident, then remove me as unfit to rule due to my misguided alliance. They rushed to the communication center where chaos reigned. Reports flooded in of an attack on the research station, not by Lumidian forces but by mercenaries from off-world, clearly hired by Taris's faction. We need to evacuate the station personnel, Elias insisted. I've already dispatched the Royal Guard, Nyla assured him. But Elias, you should know, this attack was meant to kill you too. You were supposed to be returning to the station today for scheduled meetings. The realization struck him hard. They're trying to eliminate everyone who supports cooperation between our peoples. As the night progressed, the situation grew increasingly dire. The human diplomatic team had been safely evacuated, but Prince Taris had disappeared, likely off-world with the mercenaries. Worse, intercepted communications revealed his next plan. A public announcement claiming Nyla had been compromised by human influence, declaring himself regent in the best interests of Lumidian purity. In the quiet hours before dawn, Elias and Nyla stood together on a balcony overlooking both the Crystal City and the damaged but still standing research station in the distance. What happens now? Elias asked softly. Now, Nyla said, determination evident in her voice. We fight for the future we believe in. A future where Lumidians and humans stand as equals, as partners. She turned to him. But I will not force you into this conflict, Elias. You can return to your people to safety. Elias took her hand, feeling the now familiar tingle of connection. My place is here, he said. With you. As the first light of Kyria's sun touched the crystal spires of the city, casting rainbow patterns across their joined hands, both knew that whatever came next would test not only their growing feelings for each other, but the very possibility of harmony between their worlds. Convergence of worlds. The grand hall of the Crystal Palace, normally a place of serene beauty, now resembled a war room. Holograms displayed strategic positions throughout the city, while human and Lumidian officers worked side by side, coordinating defense efforts. In the 3 days since Prince Taris's attempted coup, an uneasy alliance had formed between the research station personnel and Nyla's loyal forces. The mercenary ships have established a blockade in orbit, Commander Reeves reported, pointing to a tactical display. They're preventing any communication with Earth authorities, and Taris has rallied approximately 30% of the Lumidian military to his cause, added General Shar, Nyla's chief of defense. They control the southern districts and 3 minor Hartwells. Elias stood beside Nyla, studying the displays with growing concern. Despite having no military training, his unique position as bridge between the two species had made him an essential part of the crisis team. What about the contamination? Has it spread? He asked. Contained thanks to your neutralizing agent, Elder Kira assured him. But Taris's scientists are developing more sophisticated toxins. It's a race against time. Nyla straightened, her royal bearing evident despite the exhaustion visible in her eyes. We cannot simply react to Taris's moves. We must take the initiative. She turned to Elias. You once mentioned that humans have a saying, the best defense is a good offense. You're suggesting we attack? Commander Reeves asked. Not with weapons, Nyla clarified. With truth. The people deserve to know what's happening. Not just my supporters, but those who have sided with Taris as well. Elias understood immediately. The Hartwells. You want to use them to share information directly with all Lumidians? Nyla nodded. A full immersion broadcast. Every Lumidian connected to the network will experience the truth of recent events. The sabotage, the attack on your station, Taris's alliance with off-world mercenaries. Dangerous, General Shar warned. You would need to connect directly to the primary Hartwell. If Taris's agents introduced a toxin while you were linked, that's why I need Elias, Nyla said, turning to him. Your immunity to the essence fluid makes you the perfect guardian during the broadcast. You can monitor the well, detect any attempts at contamination. Me? Elias felt a surge of both fear and determination. I've never. You've studied our biology more thoroughly than any human, Nyla said, and I trust you with my life. She hesitated, then added more softly, with my heart. The room fell silent, the weight of her words, and their implication, hanging in the air. It was the closest she had come to publicly declaring her personal feelings, rather than just the formal bond. Elias nodded. I'll do it. The plan was set for dawn. Under cover of darkness, a small team would escort Neela and Elias to the primary Heartwell, located in the ancient temple at the city's center. Once there, Nyla would connect to the network, while Elias monitored her vital signs and the well's composition. That night, as they prepared in Neela's chambers, Elias found himself struggling with the gravity of their situation. If this fails, he said, watching her gather the ceremonial robes required for the broadcast, Terrace wins. Everything we've worked for, the alliance between our peoples, it all ends. Nyla paused, setting down the crystalline diadem that would focus her consciousness during the broadcast. Then it must not fail. She moved to him, taking his face gently between her hands. Elias, regardless of what happens tomorrow, I want you to know something. He covered her hands with his own, feeling the now familiar warmth of her purple skin against his. What? The bond gift was never about politics for me. Never about tradition or duty. Her violet eyes searched his, the patterns beneath her skin pulsing with emotion. It was always about this. What I felt when you found me in the storm. What I continue to feel every moment we're together. And what is that? He whispered, though he already knew the answer in his heart. Instead of speaking, Nyla leaned forward, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as Elias responded, pulling her closer. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin brightened dramatically, casting a purple glow around them both. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Elias smiled. I think I got the message. Good, Nyla replied, a hint of mischief in her eyes. Humans can be remarkably dense sometimes. The moment of levity faded quickly as they returned to their preparations, both acutely aware of what morning would bring. Dawn came too soon. Disguised in hooded robes, they made their way through hidden passages beneath the city, emerging in the ancient temple that housed the primary Heartwell. The massive chamber, carved from a single enormous crystal, amplified every sound, making even their breathing seem loud in the pre-dawn quiet. The Heartwell itself was larger than any Elias had seen before, a pool of swirling purple essence fluid that pulsed with hypnotic rhythm, surrounded by crystalline structures that would focus Nyla's broadcast throughout the network. No signs of Terrace's people, whispered Commander Reeves, who had insisted on accompanying them along with a small security team. Perimeter is secure. Nyla began the preparation ritual, Elder Kira assisting her with the ceremonial robes while Elias set up the monitoring equipment he'd adapted from the research station's medical bay. Once I'm connected, Nyla explained as he attached biosensors to her temples, I'll be in a trance-like state. My consciousness will spread through the network, reaching every connected Lumidian. How long can you safely maintain the connection? Elias asked. Theoretically, hours. But I've never attempted anything of this magnitude before. She caught his worried expression and added, the longer I'm connected, the more comprehensive the sharing. I need to reach as many minds as possible. Before Elias could respond, a distant explosion shook the temple. They've found us. General Shar called from his position near the entrance. Terrace's forces are approaching from the north. How long do we have? Nyla demanded. Minutes at most. They're moving quickly. Nyla turned to Elias, determination in her eyes. We proceed immediately. No time for the full preparation ritual. But the risks, Elder Kira began, are necessary, Nyla finished firmly. She squeezed Elias's hand. Be ready. With that, she stepped into the Heartwell, the essence fluid swirling around her as she submerged to her waist. The fluid began to glow more intensely, responding to her presence. Nyla raised her arms, the ceremonial robes floating around her as she began to chant in the ancient Lumidian tongue. Elias watched the monitors anxiously, noting the spike in her neural activity as the connection formed. The patterns beneath her skin began to pulse in perfect synchronization with the Heartwell itself. It's working, Elder Kira whispered in awe. She's broadcasting. The sounds of fighting grew closer. Commander Reeves and her team had sealed the main entrance, but it wouldn't hold for long against a determined assault. Her vital signs are stable, Elias reported, not taking his eyes off the monitors. Neural activity at 200% of baseline, but within safe parameters. Minutes stretched into an hour as Nyla remained in deep communion with the Heartwell. Outside, the fighting had intensified, but then, strangely, begun to subside. Something's happening, General Shar reported, returning from a scouting position near the entrance. Terrace's forces, they're standing down. Some are even turning on the mercenaries. The broadcast, Elder Kira realized. They're experiencing the truth, seeing Terrace's betrayal through the Heartwell connection. Elias allowed himself a moment of hope, but it was short-lived. The monitors suddenly began flashing warning signals as Nyla's vital signs spiked dangerously. Her neural patterns are destabilizing, he warned, rushing to the edge of the Heartwell. Something's interfering with the connection. Elder Kira's eyes widened in horror. Terrace must have introduced a disruptor into the network, targeting her specifically. We need to pull her out, Elias insisted. No, Elder Kira grabbed his arm. Breaking the connection prematurely could cause permanent neural damage. Elias watched in growing panic as Nyla's body began to tremble, the fluid around her darkening ominously. The monitors showed her life signs weakening. I'm not losing her, he decided, stripping off his equipment. Before anyone could stop him, Elias stepped into the Heartwell. The essence fluid felt strange against his skin, neither hot nor cold, but somehow alive, pulsing with consciousness. He waded toward Nyla, whose eyes had rolled back, showing only whites. What are you doing? Elder Kira called in alarm. Humans cannot connect to the network. But Elias wasn't trying to connect. Instead, he wrapped his arms around Nyla, supporting her trembling form. I'm here, he whispered against her ear. Come back to me. To everyone's astonishment, the fluid around them began to change, the darkness receding, replaced by a brilliant purple glow that spread outward in concentric rings. Where Elias's skin touched the fluid, it shimmered with an entirely new pattern. Impossible, breathed Elder Kira. He's stabilizing the connection. On the monitors, Nyla's neural patterns began to normalize. Her trembling subsided, and slowly her eyes focused once more, finding Elias's face before her. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. The fluid doesn't seem to mind, he replied with a small smile, nodding to the now brilliantly glowing pool around them. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You're anchoring me. Somehow your presence is strengthening the connection rather than disrupting it. Finish what you started, Elias urged. I'm not going anywhere. With renewed strength, Nyla completed the broadcast, sharing not only the truth of Terrace's betrayal, but also something unexpected. The experience of her connection with Elias, the bridge forming between their species, symbolized by their embrace in the Heartwell. When they finally emerged from the pool, exhausted but triumphant, news had already spread throughout the city. Terrace had been captured trying to flee off-world. His mercenary allies, abandoned by their Lumidian supporters, had surrendered to the blockade that Earth reinforcements had established upon finally receiving word of the crisis. In the days that followed, as peace returned to Kyria, Elias and Nyla faced the question that had hung between them since his arrival. The traditional bond ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow, Nyla said as they stood in the palace gardens, watching the twin moons rise over the crystal spires. But after everything that's happened, I would understand if you wished to return to Earth. Elias turned to her, taking in the beauty of her purple skin in the moonlight, the now familiar patterns that he had learned to read like a second language, currently showing anxiety beneath her calm exterior. I've been thinking about that, he said, about what it would mean to stay, to truly become part of your world. And? She asked, the patterns shifting to reveal her hope and fear intertwined. And I've realized something important, Elias continued, taking her hands in his. Home isn't a planet or a research station or even a crystal palace. He touched her cheek gently. It's where you find the person who completes you, who challenges you to be better, who sees you, really sees you, and loves what they see. The patterns beneath Nyla's skin brightened with joy. And have you found that person, Dr. Voss? Elias smiled, pulling her closer. I believe I have, Your Radiance. Their kiss sealed a bond far more meaningful than any ceremony could express. A connection between two worlds, two species, two hearts that had found each other against impossible odds. The next day, as Elias stood before the assembled court in traditional Lumidian bonding attire, he reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. A simple act of kindness in a snowstorm had changed not only his life, but the future of two civilizations. As Princess Nyla approached, radiant in her ceremonial robes, Elias knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the stars truly did choose wisely.